everyone, I'm Vandana Bharadwaz. Welcome to today's talk. It's a pleasure to have in our studios today Senator Dick Black, representing the 13th District of Virginia. Welcome, Senator Black. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, I'm delighted to be here with you this morning.
Thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us today.
Well, this is a very important interview for me because it's sort of an introduction to some of my new constituents. I was elected to the Senate this past November. Now, I represented much of Loudoun County in the House of Delegates for 8 years before that, but this is the first time I have represented South Riding. I've represented Ashburn for an 8-year period before, but South Riding is very fascinating because of the makeup, the people from South Asia who are here, who make up about a quarter of the voters. And so to me, the variations, the Senate district is quite large, and we have a couple of 100,000 people, and it's very diverse in terms of, you have suburban areas, you have rural areas, and each one has its differences. And here in South Riding, we have about a quarter of all of the population who derive from India.
That's right.
Which is very fascinating.
Yeah, South Riding as well as Ashburn and Broadlands, they do have a large immigrant population, specifically, South Asian. What other areas does the 13th district cover for our audience? Well,
we have almost all of western Loudoun County. We have western Prince William County, Gainesville, Haymarket, and so forth. But the biggest population center is Ashburn. We've got Broadlands, and then we run down to the South Riding area. So it's very, you go from the west where you have wine vineyards and you have people raising world-class horses and things like that. You come out here and people are involved in the computer industry and government contracting, and there's just a tremendous diversity in the area. What's interesting, this is the wealthiest Senate district in the United States. It is the fastest growing Senate district in the United States. And interestingly, of course, I'm a little bit partisan, but starting from the, within the state, from the top on down, it's all Republican. We've got a Republican governor and lieutenant governor and attorney general. And then, of course, I'm a member of the Republican Party. Delegate David Ramadan, who is in the lower house of the legislature, he is Republican. And then Supervisor Matt Letourneau, who represents the local area in South Riding, is Republican. And the supervisors over in Ashburn are also Republican.
So as basically a domination of the Republican Party in Virginia and in our district here in 13th District, what are your goals as a party and as the senator for this particular area?
Well, what I want to see a vibrant economy. I started off as a factory worker when I was in college, but my first summer job, I worked as a factory worker, making minimum wage, working 80 hours a week.
Wow.
And I loved it. I loved the factory, and I think most people like to work. And if you compare, what do you find in a Republican area? Typically, you find good, strong social values and a very good culture, good schools. A lot of sort of vibrant, exciting business opportunities. I know many of the people who come over from India and from South Asia are professionals. They're very interested in getting into business. There are many small businessmen and businesswomen.
Very true. Yes.
So these are things that I want to see. I want to see opportunities where I want us to stay the most prosperous, the most exciting Senate district in not only Virginia, but in the entire United States.
So representing a district that's the fastest growing and one of the wealthiest in the country, what are the challenges?
Well, it's sort of a fallout of things being so good. We grow so fast, the area is so rapidly expanding that keeping up with transportation is a huge challenge for us. So we're constantly catching up with the roads. And some people say, well, how come you don't just build the roads first? And well, you have to have money to build roads. Roads are very expensive. And besides, you don't know where people are going to want to live and work. We do planning in advance, but then people suddenly, a place like South Riding, it's just explosive, you know. Everybody wants to move to South Riding. So we need more work in South Riding. I don't think we planned as much road work here as what we're doing. But one of the unique things about my office is I'm set up where my legislative aide is also my transportation director, and he spends a tremendous amount of time on transportation. So that is an area that's very important, I know, to people here who have to commute on Route 50 and sit in the traffic.
I actually lived in Loudon for the last 8 years. So one of the issues that's always, in conversation with neighbors and all is the Dulles Rail project. What is your stand on that?
Well, as long as it can be financed, I'm fine with it. I do have some worries about the financial plan for it. It's very expensive. Now, the way that it was being done, it was going to go to Dulles Airport. That was all funded, all planned, and then they wanted to move it further into Loudoun County. And there is a financial plan, and the Board of Supervisors has now approved it. So from all appearances, it looks like Phase 2 of Metro will actually extend into Loudoun County up to Route 772. So I think that is underway. Now that they have voted for it and put it in place, that was not my decision. That's a decision for the Board of Supervisors. But I'll certainly support it. And what I want to do is I want to try to get funding, if we can, to offset some of the costs to Loudoun County, because it's my fear is that it's going to impose major costs on individual homeowners, and I'd rather have that shifted to the state if we can do it.
Sounds great. One of the other things with the fastest, growing county comes, of course, families and kids and education. So the education budget, expanding schools, building schools, seems to be also another challenge, right? In particular in that district.
This has always been a tremendous challenge for us. And I was in the House of Delegates for 8 years. I think Loudoun County has probably tripled in size since I first went into office. So we have been building schools at a tremendous pace. I mean, there's never a year when we're not building new schools in Loudoun County. And now I sit on the Education and Health Committee in the Senate. There's fairly, the Senate is much smaller than the House. And so we deal with education areas. And what I hope to do is to see a greater emphasis on science, engineering, technology, mathematics. And it doesn't just have to be for people who are on their way to college. It can also be for people who say, I'm going to get a 2-year degree, or I'm going to go to work right afterwards, but maybe I'll go to a trade school for a while. But if we emphasize these things that will increase production, we need people who do clerical work and so forth, but you know, I believe very firmly that this idea that the United States is a consumer nation, you know, our economy is run on consumption. If you are not a producer nation, you cannot continue being a consumer nation. You have to produce things that that people want, that other nations want to purchase, and it's the combination. Now, you know, I look at India, and it's kind of fascinating because it's sort of like looking back on the United States, where we went from we just had this explosive growth in production. Once you have the explosive growth in production, then you begin to have the growth in consumption. The consumption follows production. And we have gone too far to where now we're saying, well, consumption leads the way. No, production always leads the way. So I want young people, I want the people like the young lady that I spoke to you about earlier who lives here in South Riding, or well, we're not in South Riding, but lives over in South Riding. She's one of my constituents, 19 years old, and she is from India, and she is studying biomedical engineering, and she's the president-elect of the Women's Engineering Society at Virginia Commonwealth University. I was very pleased to discover that she had voted for me. And I said, well, what caused you to do that? She said, well, I looked at your background. She said, first of all, she said, in our community, we're socially conservative. She said, and I could see that you believed in a strong culture, you know, a moral, decent place to raise children. She said, the other thing is business. She said, you know, I'm going to be a professional. And she says, many of my friends are in professional areas, in computer software development, in small businesses and so forth. And I could tell that that's where you want to take the district, and where we have taken it. And so I told her, I said, well, I'm very pleased to hear that. That's very nice of you. Interestingly, I've always gotten my highest percentage of vote from the younger people. And it struck me as fascinating when we first discovered the younger people are, the more heavily they have voted for us. And I think part of it is just this transition taking place, this feeling that if you look at places that the Democrats have run, at Chicago, at Detroit, there tends to be a cultural decay. People live in an atmosphere of welfare dependence. There's tremendous crime rate and so forth. You look at places like the 13th Senate District, you look at Loudoun County, you look at Prince William County and so forth, and you know, you have a strong Republican government, and you have a vibrant economy, exciting economy. You have a tremendous education system. You don't have the cultural decay. In Detroit, it's gotten so bad. It's the only place I've ever heard, any place in the world, where you had one of the world's greatest cities, and now they're beginning to bulldoze down blocks of the city and turn it back to farmland.
Wow.
I've never heard of that
Detroit
in any
has,
country.
gone through a really bad time with this recession, right? It's very tough
and
there.
it goes back to the 60s. That's when it started. And there has been total dominance by the Democratic Party, and they've pushed people into a welfare mentality to where you don't work, you just get a check, and you go and you vote for the right party. That's not what I want. I don't want people to say, okay, I'll get something because I vote for Dick Black for Senate. I want people to say, I want this. I want to have a business. I want to have a great education. So, okay, I'm going to vote for Dick Black, not because he's going to give me things, but because he's for those things. Those are the things he wants to see. Because he's so focused on transportation, I'm tearing my hair out every time that I'm in traffic. And I know that he's somebody who has a long history of focus on transportation.
I think many of our viewers can relate to pulling their hair out while they're driving to DC. So I'm sure they're very pleased to hear about the transportation projects in South Riding and of course in other areas of Loudoun County. Also, you mentioned about science, technology, engineering, math, which are very important generally in the South Asian community. It's a big focus, especially being a community and a culture that really puts emphasis on education. So those are great things to hear from you, that this has been a focus for you as well in terms of education.
Yes, you know, we have a great number of families who come from South Asia who are very focused on education. They tend to have very bright children, and they tend to have an entrepreneurial spirit. You know, it takes a little sense of adventure to move to a new country, to adopt a new country. You know, my ancestors came over from the Isle of Man, from Ireland, and did likewise. And so you're looking for opportunities. No one comes over from South Asia and says, "I'm going to the United States because I can get a welfare check and I can sit around in the inner city and lock my door and hope that some criminals don't break in." That's not what they want. If they want that, they can go to Chicago, where Rahm Emanuel is the mayor, and they have a murder rate twice as high as Mexico City, which is in the midst of this gargantuan drug war, and yet Chicago twice. You can walk safely. If your car breaks down anywhere in the 13th district and it's 2 a.m. in the morning, I mean, you're not going to be happy about it, but you're going to be as safe as you possibly can be if you break down at 2 in the morning. There are places that have a long history of Democrat dominance where you will be in utter terror because your life will be in danger. That's not what I want this district to be. I want it to be safe. I want it to be highly educated, prosperous, and I want it to be an exciting and fun place for people. I want children to grow up and just be excited about where they are and who they are, and meeting all of their friends, and just have freedom, have the freedom that we love so much, and that people I think from India and from South Asia have come to prize so much over their history.
Actually, many South Asians embrace living in Ashburn or Broadlands or South Riding, and even in Gainesville, in those areas for the same reasons. Safety is of course important, a good neighborhood important, to have families, and of course good schools. So those are all important issues. Another concern for this community is the relations with their countries, their home countries. So how do you view, as a member of the Republican Party, the India-U.S. relations?
I mentioned to you before we start, from the time I was a small child, I've always been fascinated by foreign relations. And so I have followed, I don't mean I have studied, but I have been aware of the relations between each of the nations of South Asia and the United States over many, many years, more years than you have, okay? And what is so fascinating is, taking India in particular, you had the breakaway from colonialism and sort of a movement towards a socialist environment. And And socialism was tried for many years. Now you can see that in the United States we're moving towards socialism, but it really was not until India broke out and just shed the bonds of socialism. And it's not that, that they're, completely where they want to go, but all of a sudden there's this fantastic explosion of economic wealth and people moving from dire poverty, moving up the chain, educational opportunities, foreign trade opportunities. The United States from 2004 until 2008 tripled its foreign trade with India. It tripled it in that short span of time. It's just amazing what has happened. I have a son who's in the computer business. He employs people in India. They don't live here, they live in India. But, in this interconnected world, he says, they're very bright, they understand programming and so forth, and plus the language. I suppose we are the two largest English-speaking nations. There probably are more people who speak English in India than anywhere except the United States. I'm guessing that.
India and U.S. have a lot in common.
Tremendous.
And hopefully, that connection gets stronger with time.
It is, and one of the things that will always draw as a magnet is you have the balance of powers that every nation has to be aware of. And while we are very close to China, there is some apprehensiveness about the tremendous buildup of military force there. And it's all out of proportion to anything that's needed for defensive purposes. So the Obama administration has made, I think, a very wise decision to emphasize the military relations over in the whole Asian area, surrounding, whether it's Southeast Asia, whether it's South Asia. And I believe that our common cultural heritage, the rule of law, democracy, and then also our common national security interest are like magnets that will constantly, regardless of whether you have Republican or Democrat, I think there's this constant drift towards, and also, of course, the explosive economy, I think, will be a very big thing. Now, I believe that the relations were a little bit stronger when we had the Bush administration, perhaps not quite as strong today, and yet we're still moving forward. Even today, under Republican or Democrat, we still are moving closer, and I think that's going to continue. I think in the next administration, I have my guesses which party will prevail, but I think you're going to see a major move forward in relations. I think there will be a major re-emphasis on relations between India and the United States. And I say India, I mean the whole region is going to be very important. But I mention India just because of its enormous size, its population, its resources, its human potential. If you think of the resources of India, you think of people who are inherently very bright, very energetic, and people are everything. And if you have people who have that capability, then there's no limit. And so I think we want to keep peace in that area, and I think by shifting alliances, we can very quietly maintain the peace over there, which is good for everybody.
Definitely, and I think both the countries have a lot to gain if mutually, gain from each other's closeness, whether it's with trade or with consumption, production. There's a lot to gain.
Sure.
As far as you understand Mitt Romney's position, how do you see him handling this foreign policy issue with India if he is elected president?
I really believe that he will have a major emphasis on India, and it may be greater than any past American president. And I say that because he is more attuned to some of the trade imbalances with China. I think he is more attuned to some of the military concerns. And believe me, the United States has no interest in any military or foreign policy conflicts with China. I will guarantee neither party. We want peace in that area. And I believe we're going to see the United States gradually draw down its emphasis on all of the conflict in the Middle East. I think we've made serious mistakes. I've never agreed. I never agreed with George Bush's policy on the Middle East. I had hopes that the Obama administration would significantly reverse them, and yet I see them just doubling down. We're fighting on places we never imagined we'd be fighting. And now we're looking at new wars. We've got to stop that. We've got to stop. When Ronald Reagan was the president, we never had a single war in 8 years. Amazing.
It was a good time.
It was a good time. And we were at peace, and people loved Americans. We loved everybody else. It was a time of world peace, in spite of all the tensions with the Soviet Union. We need to get back there. And I really would like to see the Reagan model become our model for foreign policy in South Asia. Because there we have an opportunity. We don't have the conflict, and yet we can use Reagan's wisdom, which was the balance of power, create alignments with nations that will maintain the peace. Not to go in and say, oh, we're going to take over your country, we're going to change your culture, your way of living, your government. Baloney. That's a loser's game. The people of that country will decide the future of that country. But what we can do is we can offer to help. If there is a nation that wants to go in a direction that sort of coincides with us, then we'll help. If they want to go in a different direction, maybe we diplomatically encourage them to go the other way. But we never try to impose our will on another nation, whether it's a tiny nation or whether it's a great nation. That's my foreign policy. I'm not sure that the two parties have reached that point, but I think inevitably that's the direction that we will go. I am very optimistic that with Mitt Romney, we will see a major improvement. I won't say just improvement, but an enhancement of our relations and our foreign trade with India, with all of the nations of South Africa, and also with Southeast Asia too.
I noticed, when I was reading through your website, and for our viewers, that is dickblackforsenate.com if you'd like to learn more about Senator Black. But as I was reading through that, I noticed that you had worked in the military and then studied law. So I'd love it if you can share that with the audience.
I have done more things, but I'll focus on the big things. I was in college. I was a chemistry major. I was pre-med, and I ran out of money. So I joined the Marine Corps, and before long I became a pilot. I volunteered to fight in Vietnam. I flew 269 combat missions, came back with bullet holes in the plane 4 times, And I was very young. It was exciting. And because I was a 21-year-old pilot. And then I fought on the ground with the 1st Marine Regiment in the most bitter campaign of the whole war. And I had an air control group of 6 men. We controlled the medical evacuations, the airstrikes, artillery, all sorts of things. And out of the 6 men, in 3 months, we had 5 wounded and 3 killed.
Oh,
so, people would be wounded, and then they'd be wounded again, or they'd be wounded, they'd be killed, and that sort of thing. So I saw very bitter combat. I came back, I was a Marine company commander, and I built the airfield at Vieques Island, Puerto Rico. So I had a big construction company, and we built roads. We had a big rock quarry. I went back to school. I had an accounting degree, and I worked for Arthur Anderson & Company, which was one of the world's 2 biggest accounting firms at the time. And then I went to law school, and I was in private practice. And then I went into the Army JAG Corps, which is the legal arm of the military. And I ran large law offices where I'd have anywhere from 25 to 40 attorneys who worked for me, kind of like being a United States attorney. And then I ended up in the Pentagon, and there I was responsible for preparing executive orders for the president's signature. We drafted legislation that was enacted by the U.S. Congress. I testified several times before congressional committees, and that's always exciting, when you're before the U.S. Congress. And then I retired out of the Pentagon, and I was a partner in a law firm. It was a multi-state law firm. And I was also a media commentator, and I did any number of interviews with CNN, with MSNBC, with Fox, with all these. And in fact, one of the Judge Advocates General, John Fu, he was native Chinese, and one day he called me. He said, "Hey Dick," he said, June Fu and I were in Beijing. We turn on the TV, and there you are on CNN International. We said, we can't get away from this guy. So that was funny. But I did a lot of that, and then I was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, where I spent 8 years, and transportation was the big thing. The biggest project that I have done is the Route 28 freeway. It used to be a narrow, congested highway. People were bumper to bumper for miles, and we went in, we widened the road, and we put in the overpasses so that people can, go on very quickly. And it's become probably the finest, most efficient road of its size in all of Virginia. And we did it during a time when there was kind of a recession, there was no money, and we figured out how to do it. And so we're very, very proud of the Route 28. And what we want to do is we want to do something similar with Route 50, where I don't know that we can do it on that grand scale, but we want to fix the problems on Route 50.
Oh yeah, I've driven on 28 many times, and every time I would see the construction, I'd say, oh great, one more traffic light gone, and now we can take an exit, and it was wonderful to see that road change over the years.
Yes,
it's much better.
It has been a boon. I would say for the average family in Ashburn, it's given them an extra half an hour to 45 minutes of family time. And that's for 80,000 people on average. That's a big change in people's lives.
We need as much as we can get of family time.
We need some down here.
That's right. Senator Black, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I had a wonderful time talking to you today.
Well, thank you. You have been a delight. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to visit with all of your viewers. This has been very nice for me.
One last question. If any of the residents within your district would like to contact you for questions or concerns, what's the best way for them to do that?
Okay, the best way is to get in touch with my aide by email. His email address is Chris, C-H-R-I-S, at senatorblack.com. They can also go on my website, which is just www.senatorblack.com, and from there they can get contact information also. So that's, and all you have to remember is senatorblack.com. senatorblack.com. That's easy. And I'm happy to get a phone call. If someone has a particular problem, sometimes there are people who have problems with the state tax authorities. Sometimes there are transportation problems or things of that sort, and we're happy to, can't always help, but we'll try to do what we can to be of assistance.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your experience and your viewpoints.
Okay, well, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful interview.